Right now, in Perth, a house is selling every 26 minutes on average. And at the same time, the number of homes actually available to rent has dropped so low that agents are describing open homes with lines out the door. Here's the number that sums it up. In the week ending June 14th, REIWA recorded 659 property sales in Perth. That's down from 910 sales in the same week last year. Fewer homes are changing hands, but prices keep climbing anyway. That's not normal. And today, I want to walk you through exactly why it's happening.
Before we get into it, if you're someone trying to make sense of what's actually going on in Australian real estate right now, not the guesswork, the actual data, hit subscribe. We break down markets like this every week, city by city, using the numbers straight from REIWA, Cotality, and the Reserve Bank. All right, let's get into what's happening in Perth. So here's the situation in plain terms. Perth's median house price, based on REIWA's most recent data covering the 12 months to May 2026, sits at $925,000. The median unit price is $661,000. Both of those are records for the city. Now, normally when prices rise that fast, you'd expect it's because everyone's rushing to buy, but that's only half the story here. The real driver is that there simply aren't enough homes being built or listed to keep up with the people who want to live in Perth. REIWA President Suzanne Brown has said it plainly. Perth prices continue to be driven by a significant imbalance between supply and demand. That's not a complicated idea, it just means more people are chasing fewer properties, and until that changes, prices don't come down, they go up.
Let's talk about why supply actually collapsed, because this is the part most people don't fully understand. Western Australia's population has been growing fast, over 2% a year, driven mostly by people moving in from overseas and from other states. That's a lot of new households needing somewhere to live every single year. At the same time, home building went the other way. New home completions in Western Australia peaked in the December 2024 quarter, the strongest result in 7 years. But since then, completions have fallen every single quarter. Builders have been dealing with higher material costs, labour shortages, and approval delays, and a lot of projects that were planned during the boom just haven't been finished on time. On top of that, the established home market tightened up too. Heading into 2025, the number of existing homes being listed for sale actually sat below long-term averages. So you had fewer new homes finished and fewer existing owners deciding to sell. Put those two together and you get exactly what we're seeing now. There has been some improvement. By mid-April this year, listings had jumped 20% over 4 weeks to 3,669 properties. Compare that to just 1,881 properties listed at the end of 2025, which was a record low at the time. So sellers are coming back to the market. The problem is, buyer demand is still outrunning that extra supply.
If you think buying is tough right now, renting in Perth is arguably worse. The median house rent has hit a record $750 a week, according to REWA's latest figures. Units are renting for a median of $700 a week. And back in April, the rental vacancy rate across Perth was sitting at just 0.5%, according to SQM research. To put that in context, most economists consider anything under 2 or 3% a tight rental market. 0.5% means there were fewer than 1,000 rental properties available across the entire city at one point. Western Australia is currently leading the country in rent growth, and REWA data from earlier this year showed tenants typically putting around a third of their pre-tax income toward housing costs. So renters aren't just dealing with higher prices, they're dealing with almost no choice about where they live.
The Reserve Bank raised the cash rate 3 times earlier this year, and it now sits at 4.35%. At its most recent meeting on June 24th, the RBA left rates unchanged, citing signs that the economy is slowing, but also flagging that inflation is still running hotter than they'd like, with the trimmed mean sitting at 3.6% in May. Normally, when borrowing gets more expensive, buyers pull back and prices ease, and that is happening in some cities. Sydney and Melbourne have both recorded price falls this year as higher rates cut into how much people can borrow. But Perth hasn't followed that pattern, at least not yet. The reason comes down to affordability. Perth buyers, on average, borrow less relative to their income than buyers in Sydney or Melbourne, so the same rate rise doesn't hit them as hard. And because the supply shortage in Perth is so severe, even buyers with reduced borrowing power are still competing hard for the same limited number of homes. The next Reserve Bank decision lands on August 11th, and if rates move again, Perth will be one of the markets worth watching closely because it's one of the only major cities still absorbing rate hikes without prices actually falling.
On the policy side, the Western Australian government has put $4.7 billion toward housing over 4 years in this year's state budget. REWA has welcomed that spending, but they've also said it's still an open question whether it's enough to fix a shortfall this size. Estimates suggest Western Australia needs more than 20,000 new dwellings a year just to keep up with population growth, and completions haven't been hitting that number. There's also been movement at the local level. Suburbs like Morley, Bayswater and Beckenham have had zoning changes that now allow multiple dwellings like triplexes on blocks that used to hold a single house. It's a small step, but it's aimed directly at adding supply in established areas rather than just building further out on the fringe. So here's where things actually stand as of right now. Perth has record prices, a rental vacancy rate near the lowest in the country, building completions that still haven't caught up with population growth, and an interest rate environment that's cooling other cities but hasn't slowed Perth down yet. None of this means the market can't shift. If completions keep rising and interest rates go up again in August, some of that pressure could start to ease. But right now, the numbers say Perth is still short on supply, and until that changes, buyers, renters, and investors are all going to keep feeling it. If you want us to cover how this compares to Adelaide or Brisbane, two other cities dealing with the same supply squeeze, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you catch that video when it goes up.